This tutorial is about doing error handling within Async and await using JSON data. The tutorial will show you how to capture errors such as no internet connection, server error, invalid response, and key not found. I will now demonstrate how to capture key not found. As you can see, because it includes an invalid key, the key wasn't found within the JSON payload. The next error I would demonstrate is no internet connection. As you can see, there's no internet connectivity, so it shows the error on the screen. The next error I'll be testing for is invalid response. So these are the type of errors the application can capture. So to start the tutorial, please create a new SwiftUI application. Create a new file, create a new Swift file. Called post. Within this file, we need to create a new struct that conforms codable, and then add the following variables: let user ID int, let ID int, let title string, let body string. This struct includes the payloads that our JSON network requests will be expecting. Create another Swift file. And name the file network manager. No, network managing. I think a better name would be network manager protocol. Next thing we need to do is to define our protocol. We'll call the protocol network managing. As it manages the network. And the protocol will have one function signature, which is func fetch data codable from URL async throws. This function returns a generic object and also fetches data from a URL. The next thing we need to do is to create another Swift file. This file will be called network error, and the purpose of the file is to capture the type of errors within an enum. Network error, enum, network error, error, case, no internet connection, case, server error, case, invalid response, case, key not found. And these are the cases that our network manager will validate against. Create a new Swift file, and for this file, name the file network manager. The network manager class will have one method, as derived from our protocol network managing. So I'll just add the stub now, which is our function signature that we need to implement. On lines 11, delete the following. And then we're just returning a generic function. A generic object. So what this function will do, it will fetch data from a URL and decode it to a codable type, which is a generic type. The next thing we need to do is to use the URL sessions shared property to fetch the data from the provided URL. Let data response equals try await URL session shared data from URL. The next thing we need to do is to check the HTTP status code of the response. Guard let HTTP response equals response as HTTP URL response, else throw network error invalid response. So what that line does, if the response is not HTTP response, throw an invalid response error to the calling routine or to the variable that's referenced in the fetch data function. The next thing we need to do is to check if the status code indicates a server error or not. So if the status code is between 500 and 600, then an error has happened. Network error, server error. The next thing we need to check for is to see if the response code includes a valid response, such as a successful response. So we check between 200 and 300. Contains HTTP response status code, else. If it's between 2 and 300, then it's a successful response, else it's a network error, invalid response. And the next thing we need to do is, if everything was okay, so there wasn't no server error or invalid response, then we need to decode the fetch data. I type in the following: return try JSON decoder, decode T, which is a generic, from data. So we decode the fetch data to the provided codable type using JSON decoder. think there's an error somewhere. JSON decoder, decode, open bracket t, dot self from data. Just try that again. Decode t dot self dot from data. And there's still an error. And what the problem is, on lines 11, T needs to conform to codable, so we just add the colon, codable. And also, this return method on line 29, that should be on line 30 or after. No, that's incorrect. No, that should be where it was previously, which is there. And now the next thing we need to do is to catch any decoding errors, such as key not found. And we do that on line 30, so just type in the following. Catch, let decoding error as decoding error. Switch, decoding error. Case dot key not found. Throw network error key not found. Default throw decoding error. The next error we need to catch is URL error as URL error. If URL error dot code is equal to dot not connected to internet, throw network error dot no internet connection, else throw URL error. catch. So the purpose of the catch, the last catch, is to handle other type of errors that wasn't defined up above. Throw error. I'll just compile it. In the next tutorial, we will capture the errors to be shown on the content view. This tutorial is about doing error handling within async and await using JSON data. The tutorial will show you how to capture errors such as no internet connection, server error, invalid response, and key not found. I will now demonstrate how to capture key not found. As you can see, because it includes an invalid key, the key wasn't found within the JSON payload. The next error I will demonstrate is no internet connection. As you can see, there's no internet connectivity, so it shows the error on the screen. The next error I'll be testing for is invalid response. So these are the type of errors the application can capture. In SwiftUI view, name the view content view model. The purpose of the content view model is to call the network manager and populate the data on the content view. And then do the following. We can delete our preview. Add the following. At observe observable. We need to import observation first. At observable this is incorrect. This should be a class and not a view. Delete the lines between 13 and 15. Add at main actor. The purpose of using at main actor is to make sure that the process, the code that we're going to be writing, is always executed on the UI thread to reduce any blockages on the UI. Next thing we need to do is to add a few variables. Var post, which is an object array, a post, equals open bracket, close bracket, creates an empty array. Var error message, string, optional. Let network manager, Now we're to create our instructor or init method. Because we're using a bit of dependency injection. The next thing we need to do is to create our actual fetch method, which is called fetch data. And it will fetch asynchronously since it is doing a web request. Let fetch post equals try await network manager fetch data from URL. String, and the URL is https JSON placeholder dot TP code .com, and we're using the post endpoint API. And then we just add false on wrapping. Really, that should be safe on wrapping, really. Self.post equals fetch post. On line 32, what we're doing there, we update the post array with the fetch post. And then now we need to add our catch block to capture any errors that happened. And then we need a switch statement to handle the different types of errors that may have happened. Network error, switch error, network error, no internet connection. Self dot error message equals no internet connection. And then for the next error, we need to capture, that is server error, network error, server error, self dot error message, server error, the next case statement we need is invalid response, network error dot invalid response, self dot error message equals invalid response, and then the next one is network error key not found, self dot error message key not found, and then for our final condition, which is our default, this will capture any other errors that may have happened. An error occurred. Error. I'll just compile it. There's an error on line 49, typed in incorrectly. That should be key not found, colon. Compile it again. So that's compiled. So now what we can do is to implement our content view. And then we can test the actual errors. At state var view model content view model. We can delete our preview, we're not using it as yet. We use the previews in future tutorials. And then on line 16, delete between line 16 and lines 19. Type in the following within the VStat. If not view model post is empty. So if there's information in our array, list view model dot post ID /ID, post in, vstack, alignment, leading, text, string, post ID. So we'll just show the ID. On line 19, we need a bracket there. Dot font, dot headline, text, post dot body, dot font, dot sub headline. So on line 16, we're testing to make sure there's data. If there's data, we display the data using the list. But if there wasn't no data or some error happens, then we need to do the following. On line 26, enter the following, else if let error message is equal to view model dot error message. So there was an error, we display the error within the text element. Else there's no error, so we just display that we're fetching data on the web server. Fetching data. We can delete the padding and rename it as on the pair, since we need to call our fetch data method view model dot fetch data. On line 21, that should be headline. I'll just compile it. We need to create an instance of our network manager within our file, within our main app file, which is this one here. I'll type in the following, let network manager equals to network manager, and then we need to pass in the instance as a dependency, since we're using dependency injection. So we pass in the instance on line 15. Network manager, network manager. I'll just compile it. Compiled. Now let's run it to see if it works or not. As you can see, it's got the data from our API. So now let's test the actual error handling functionality. So now I'll just exit the application, turn the Wi-Fi off, as you can see, I turned off the Wi-Fi and it displays the correct message that there's no internet connection. The next thing I'll do is to go within the post struct, and then I'll just enter another property that doesn't exist, x string, and run it. Oh yeah, I need internet connectivity for that. So I'll just make sure we're connected to the internet. Just compiling at the moment. Key not found. Because the key doesn't exist in our payloads. So that's correct. The next error we will test is invalid response. So we need to go into our content view model. And to test that, just change the API to something invalid. So for the API for posts, I'll just put 1 at the end and then test it. As you can see, it displays invalid response. I'll just run it again because I think there was an error with the video. Yes, it displayed invalid response. Thank you for joining us. If you found this tutorial helpful, please comment, like and subscribe. See you next week.